time they built those towers, the New Yorkers hated it because it was so small that it kind of ruined the skyline.
Oh,
Just before it was finished, high wire connector, like up there, over there. With one tower to the other, shot a line.
really?
Then the funny the other side, pulled the line across. Then he added a roll and a cable that secured it between the two towers.
Yeah.
And then in the morning, people went to work, 110 floors up.
No, really?
There might be another one.
Holy
But,
cow.
oh, yeah. It's the whole land.
That's crazy. What do you do?
Roll.
Oh, my goodness.
That's why they did it overnight.
Oh,
So when he got to the other side, a bunch of the rest for trespassing.
that's,
Oh, yeah, I guess that would have been
that would be so scary.
a splat and a half.
Yeah. Did you live here? Or you just live
Oh,
here?
it's vacation.
Oh, really?
It's not a vacation. That was supposed to have been on the 110th floor. That morning. So it's a little late. Yeah. Nobody got out. Have you been to New York? Have you
No,
traveling?
always wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
Times Square, so just, I don't know, it looks so
Oh, it is. I was just there a couple days ago.
Oh, really?
And the break was 20th anniversary, but also celebration.
Oh,
Yep, there was night lights.
yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, like Broadway shows and musicals.
Yeah.
Would blow you away.
I like going to those transactions.
Yep.
I love those. But I'm sure it's hard to get ones.
Well, just the set design, just like
Yeah.
over here. Well, the smoldering pile was still hot 3 months later. The whole thing broke apart from that one.
No.
I'll let you get back to it.
Oh, no, I don't have a plate for this. Let me like go everywhere. Is that just a genre or just like
It falls on the wild. Mr. Kep is my favorite.
Oh, really?
I live over
Oh,
Princess of Rome.
that's very convenient.
Oh, yeah, I know. Stuff like all that. Well, like 20 years ago, I was all over the state. But it first happened at the 10th anniversary. Not so often anymore, but when around anniversary. I'll put everything away until 125th. Acting, theater,
Oh, really?
music, crowd, the bigger the better, actually. less energy, the larger tunnel, the smaller one. So you would have to the midway and see how then I free flow check your body.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Take a free away. Senior year, last week.
Yeah.
Big transition though. Like, that's kind of how close you are to your class. That's all basketball is gone to another in terms of overall. But my class was together quite a lot. But my brother's class was 2 years ahead of me.
They don't remember?
Well, maybe once.
Oh.
So, dog was pretty good. Yeah, good though. Thankful. Yeah. Keep your friends on. Don't contact.
Yeah.
They're so you can't stand around. The time goes by. It's over. So I do travel. I mean, you know, so
9-12 report that the 2,000 students are the assembly right now. Grade 9-12 report that heading to the 2,000 students for the assembly. Grade 7 and 8 report to your classroom so you can watch the live stream. 7 and 8 report to your classroom so you can live stream the assembly. Thank you.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I go back to this college year. And so on this old college. What's wrong with the road?
Oh, really?
Sure. Yeah, sent letter started. Gave me everything I was like different house.
Yeah, they used to have
More product third. Over today. Just coming over. It all sound a little bit. She's strong.
Scott just said you were going to be standing up here during the thing. Doug just told me to do this. I'm just going to be standing up here. Okay. Good for the school? That'd be great. I'll give you one with the cushion. Thank you. That was for a while. Right there. Right, Kev.
See the computer guy? New one, yeah.
Okay, we will get started. Thank you very much. Looks like you guys all want to sit in the back, I guess, not be close. The job's spreading out because of COVID. There are a few more COVID cases at the junior high level, so you may see more masks around the school the next couple of weeks. Don't pick on those kids, that's their choice. We had a couple kids go home this week because they chose to wear a mask and they got picked on. That's their individual choice, please respect their decision. As we move forward, if there is more COVID in the building, we ask that you guys check yourself before you come to school. If you have a fever, chills, headache, you should stay home for at least every 2 hours after those symptoms go away. The next step that we'll probably take in this COVID battle is we probably look at having staff mask up first, and then if there's still more cases, then we'll look at having students. That's still a ways away, so we don't want that to happen, obviously, so be cognizant of your own health before you come to school. Any questions about that? Okay, we have about a 45-minute presentation this morning. We have elected to keep 7th and 8th grade back in the classroom just to have less people in the gym. We have Father Jeff here. He is actually my priest growing up in Burbank, Minnesota. Father Jeff's going to tell a story about 9/11. He was supposed to be on the 110th floor of the World Trade Center, but his copy date was a little too late, so he didn't make it up that far, and nobody survived the 110th floor. So very lucky that he's with us here today. We were hoping to have him last Friday, but he's actually in New York for a memorial. So, Father Jeff, pass it along to you. Test.
35 years ago, I was living and working in Frowerville. 35 years ago, Frowerville. At the time I was living in Frowerville 35 years ago, I was wishing I was living in Bertha. Then at least my football team would have won again. 35 years ago, Bertha Bears. 65-0. We considered it a victory. If we scored 3 points against you, yay, we scored. So are you guys as good this year as they go right up 65 points a game? All right. We finally wore you down after 35 years. All right. My name is Father Jeff. Ethan. I was in New York 20 years ago for vacation. And our first stop that morning on September 11th was on the 110th floor of the World Trade Center. Up on the top floor there is a restaurant called Window of the World. And when you sat down at your table, the whole floor slowly rotated so that you would have a view of all of New York City and the area. My plane was late, coming in the night before, and because we were staying, my friend and I, very close to the towers, and the place where we were staying had coffee on, and so we thought we would be hospitable and accept their hospitality. And so instead of having coffee on the top of the tower, we had coffee with our host. The doctor said I had to lay off coffee because of high blood pressure, but I was on vacation. And when you're on vacation, calories don't count. Right? And so I had a second cup of coffee. from this cup. I'm a historian. And so I went back to the kitchen later and got the cup out of the sink. And for years, I preserved it unwashed. Until my mother finally said, "Oh, for goodness sake, wash the sink." So it was during the second cup of coffee, which I should not have had, that the plane struck. And we find out later that nobody got out of that restaurant. They were all killed. When my partner, another Catholic priest, realized, oh man, that we were saved, we were standing, watching TV, like the rest of the world, waking up that morning, slowly, people were calling everybody, turn on your TV, turn on your TV! You won't believe this! And people were turning on their TV going, wow, what movie is playing? And in New York City, when that first plane hit, everybody thought, an accident. Because some 40 years earlier, a plane hit the Empire State Building in the fog. It was an accident. And so we found the same thing happen. Because at the time, little tourist planes, little said that you could rent a plane or a helicopter, and you could fly up and down the river in New York between the buildings and the tourists. And so we thought one of the planes hit the building. It's a tall building, easy to do. Most buildings are low, 40-story high, 110. But when that second plane hit, instantly, the entire nation knew this is not an accident. We weren't sure exactly what was happening, but it was something bad. And then boom, Pentagon in Washington, D.C. gets hit by a plane. Boom, another plane falls out of the sky in Pennsylvania. And by the way, the guy that led the attack in Pennsylvania and crashed in Pennsylvania was from Minnesota. Tom Burnett. The passengers, some was passengers just out of high school himself, freshman in college, helped lead the attack and take the plane back before it crashed. And so we didn't know how many other planes were loaded for this. All we knew was that we were on an island in Manhattan. And they very quickly shut down all the bridges and subways so that you could leave, but you couldn't get on. And immediately the firefighters were arriving at what would become known as ground zero. The plane hit on the 86th floor out of 110, high up. But amazingly, the way the building was designed, all glass, mostly with steel girders, the plane sliced right through it like butter. It didn't tip over the way we intended it to. It stayed standing, miraculously. But a fire nonetheless. As the fuel from that plane, now ruptured, was forced down the elevator shaft as if you were going level than a straw. Came down, hit the ground, blew out the window of the lobby, caused an updraft that sucked the fire up the elevator shafts, slowly melting the girders. And that's what caused the towers to pancake and collapse on top of itself. And so for 3 straight days, the sirens of the fire engines and the ambulances cried out. If you've ever been around a little baby that cried nonstop, all right, multiply that times 10,000. No sleep for everybody for 72 hours because of the noise. And when the first tower was attacked, and the fire department showed up, they had to walk, carry their equipment up the stairwells to rescue people, or to try to. 86 floors. I got tired of walking from the front of the building to the gym. And the firefighters were up when the second tower got hit, 15 minutes later. But this way, seeing that the tower didn't fall over from the first strike, lowered its altitude. And even at 60 floors above the rest of the city skyline, it was only the belly button of the Twin Tower. Thinking that if they hit it in the middle, it'll buckle its knees. But again, the same thing happened. Sliced right through. Both now are burning or standing. And so the other fire department are going, whoa, 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 all right. They're heading up the second tower. But because the second tower was getting low, it had more weight on it. So the fire is melting the girders. Finally, they give out, the tower collapses. Firefighters, civilians, all gone. But part of the problem was that because the glass was falling off the building, raining down, and these buildings were sitting on 14 acres. There are in fact 5 buildings in the World Trade Center complex. The 2 Twin Towers, which you're familiar with, but also 3 smaller ones. 3 towers actually fell that day. The one in the middle also fell. Because debris from the first 2 towers that fell landed on top of it and collapsed it. But it's 14 acres, it's huge. And so when the first plane was hit and glass was raining down, people in these 5 buildings were told, stay in the buildings. It's raining glass outside. And so for those who could have escaped, stayed in shelter. And when that first tower collapsed, it was like, what about the second tower? Get out! Get out! But the fire department's walkie-talkies weren't working because they're connected to the building's audio system. That was severed. They didn't get the message. And so as they were working their way up to rescue people, people were working their way down the stairwell, filled with that white smoke. Pulverized sheetrock. It's all coming down 8 floors, feeling your way. Kind of wishing you had learned Braille. That every floor has Braille. So the second tower collapses on the firefighters and whatever civilians. 375 firefighters died in the towers, along with 3,000 civilians. My partner and I were standing in the lobby of the guest house where we were staying, sirens blaring, towers falling. The TV was saying, it is crowded down at ground zero. Because the towers sit right at the point, at Wall Street, at the tip of the island. Another step further, you're in New York Harbor. And if you swim, you get to the Statue of Liberty. And the TVs are telling people, Because those who were running away, they were running to the towers, trying to help. But it got to be too crowded. And so the TVs were telling the people, don't go down there unless you are essential personnel, firefighters, medics, ambulance drivers. Don't go down there. Essential personnel only. Now as clergy, my partner and I decided we were essential. And so we went down there. And because of our calling, because of our religions, and all denominations, eventually got down there to help. We were allowed in. My partner and I were at the hospital closest to ground zero. And we were waiting as the ambulances came in with the firefighters. And there were so many who were on the plaza when the towers collapsed that it took them a while to get out of the smoke. Because imagine 110th floors of debris landing on top of crushing, flipping fire trucks like tiddlywinks. And you're climbing over and under the debris, and you can't see, and you can barely breathe. And these firefighters were coming out of the smoke. And the ambulance drivers were grabbing the guys, tossing them in the back of the ambulance, like cordwood, 6, 8, 12 per vehicle. Pulling up to the hospital, opening up the back door, and just pushing them all out in order to go back to ground zero for more. Over 400 firefighters were brought in. And my job, basically, now I've lost 50 pounds since then. The doctor put me on a diet anyways, the one that called me off coffee. My job basically was to keep the firefighters from going back to ground zero because they were all in shock. Most of them just needed their eyes, their ears, and their mouths cleaned out of all the dust. It's a my hefty job of to sit on their laps and pull off their boots. So they went to go barefoot back to help. Some of the firefighters died in the hallways, but we kept them all in there. Now, during all of this first morning chaos, one of the lessons, and the lesson for y'all, I say y'all, because I'm from southern Otter Tail County. The biggest lesson was that the nation was in shock. People on Manhattan Island were in deep, deep shock. Everything was upended. Nothing was normal. We felt like little kids, lost. What next? What next? Help me. And the big lesson here is that in the midst of this deep crisis, and for little crisis coming, or for simple situations, the word no to any request during that first day was not appropriate, was not possible. If somebody said, I need help, you couldn't say, I'm a visitor here, I don't know. And so the answer would have been no. Can you help me? No. And the problem is, we're Americans. We're so efficient and quick to respond that if we don't know the answer, if we don't see how we can help, or if we don't see a solution, What's the answer? No. No. The lesson is we need to give ourselves time to think. Think of a solution. There is none. Now I'm talking about appropriate responses to help. So I'm in the hospital. Another priest, he's from Australia. He comes up to me. Aye, Padre. You got an extra cup? That's my Aussie accent. Sounds kind of like a Southern Otter but do you have an extra collar? These are made of plastic. A lot easier than bow tie. Right? They're made of plastic. You get about a dozen in your shirt when you buy them. They're like tissue paper. You know, they're under my car seat. They're in the glove box. They're like, where's my collar? Right? He had lost his. And so the hospital staff were trying to shoo him out because it's too crowded in there. And so he didn't want to leave, he wanted to help. Do I, Father Jeff, have an extra collar? Because he knows too, you get a dozen of these in church. Order. Well, I only had the one collar. But if I gave it to him, I would not have a collar and I would be hassled. So do I have an extra collar? My answer was going to be, no. But I couldn't say no. I couldn't say no. Nobody could say no. So, think. We've got one collar. We've got two priests. We're standing by the operating room where they got sharp objects. What are we going to do? We cut the collar in half. This is the collar. And unlike the coffee cup, I haven't washed it. It still has the dust and the grime from that day. He got half, I got half. We both got to stay. Looking back on it, I could have given him 1/3 of the collar, so that because half the collar keeps falling out on both of us, right? So I'm hoping he kept his collar, his half. And someday when I'm in Australia, I can be walking down the street trying to match up my end with his. But again, the important thing is there is a solution. Give yourself time to think of one. Okay? Don't be so efficient that you gotta, it'll be no otherwise. Now, we were down there all day. Very few civilians were brought into the hospital. Thousands and thousands of cots were being set up by the National Guard outside on the sidewalks for the civilians. None of the cots were used. There were no civilians. But now the family members of those who worked in the towers, there were thousands who worked in those towers. Of those who didn't get out, 3,000 died. The family members were now looking for the lost loved ones. A lot of them were optimistic that a beam fell and knocked them on the head, and they're walking around the streets of Manhattan with amnesia, like some Saturday morning cartoon, or that they were unconscious in some hospital. There were 7 hospitals in Manhattan. They could be in any one of them. And so the family were going around Wall 7, trying to find the loved ones. So after working all day at the hospital, the city decided this is exhausting for the families. It is also fruitless for the family to keep wandering around like this. And so my partner and I were invited to be part of a 25-member team of various denominations of religions. And we huddled up the next day and came up with a plan to meet with the families. And so we told them, we have a missing person bureau. You come and register your loved one's name at our bureau, and we will check all the hospitals to see if your loved one is there. And so the families all said, great! One extra stop we can add to our endless round of the hospitals. But when we got in, there was a big hockey rink we were using, but for inline skating. And so at the end where the goalie is, one entrance. The registration table for the families is the person bureau at the other end. And in the middle were all of these chairs scattered like hockey pucks and practice. And the family had to work their way through all these chairs. Good Lord, can't we just go straight down the line? Right? So once they got down there to register, they had to come back through the chairs. And the clergy defense. All right. You're going to have to get by me first, all right? Nobody could leave unless they talked to one of us 25 clergy. They had no choice. And when we stopped them, our job was to look them in the eye. If they were in shock, they were running on adrenaline. Our job was to look them in the eye and say, your son is dead. Your husband's not coming home. Give it up. No guilt, but thoroughly grief. Because one family member is going to stop looking for the loved one. Ever. Ever. This is deep compassion, but you also can learn. Something might be trivial to you or to any situation you might think of, get over it, good Lord. But it affects them. And to be empathetic, to connect with them. Not to convince them to do otherwise, but to truly be present. They would have figured out on their own that their loved ones were gone. But to have somebody there deepest in them. And that's why we had all these chairs. I became an expert at moving the chair. If I would catch somebody, tell it's over, they would blink at me, waiting for me to get out of the way so they could go back to the hospital rounds. And I would have to repeat it. And repeat it as often as necessary to get through. And then when I realized it's over, it's really over. All that adrenaline they were running on, drained. And I was very good at using my foot to drag a chair over and turn it so that when they collapsed, they hit the chair. And I told whoever they were with, as soon as the dog catches the breath, you got to get out of here. We've got hundreds more coming. And so we did that all day. Now what's interesting is that the whole world was watching us and we knew it. But we also felt very isolated. Because the only help that was available on the island were on the island. Nobody could come on to join us. We were afraid of trucks carrying bombs. The bridges were shut down, except to leave. The subway was shut down, period. No transportation. Everybody had to stay or get off. And if you were staying, you were helping. But people did cook for us. Restaurants were not open for regular business, but they cooked and they brought food to the various firehouses and to the hospitals for the workers. People donated or wanted to donate, and they were lining up to donate blood. But they were all turned away. No need. All right, thank you. But people were bringing clothes in case the civilians got their clothes wet in the fire holes. Very quickly, it didn't turn that way. But everybody wanted to do something. And everybody can do something. And so for yourselves, as you go off into life, you will discover that there are situations where, yeah, there is somebody else that can help them. But to be aware that maybe perhaps you can too, or to point out a need. So the tragedy brought out really the greatness in Americans. There were very few, if any, cowards. Everybody had a sense of community in New York. Even strangers, visitors like myself. This was an assault, not on the United States of America, but it was on that level. But who was hurt? My brothers and sisters, your brothers and sisters. And this will have a ripple effect throughout the nation. Pretty soon we can realize that, hey, we've got our own little crisis. A neighbor's house burns down. Big deal? Well, to the family that lost everything, yeah. Would New York necessarily care? Not in Minnesota. But you're local. You're here. You can help, and you do help. What you saw in New York is just magnified. It exists everywhere. But so too does the other reaction. For the first 3 days, people were spiritually strengthening themselves. God help us. Right? But once the nation caught our breath, it was like, whoa. We then, sadly, you got to watch out for this yourselves. We said, now! Da-da-da! Whose butt do we kick? Revenge. War. Yikes! Right? And is that a ripple effect across the nation, including our own state? Every Arab suspect, every Muslim a terrorist, and pretty soon we were turning our backs on our neighbors, would be suspicious, discriminating. We've had it in the cities, vandalism at mosques, bombings of mosques. The guy that did that just got 52 years for that. Oh, so angry! Well, you get chill in jail. Half a century. Okay. Were they just? No. Crime, violence, never good, never good. But underlying all that really is the truest strength of our community. Empathy, trying to understand the differences that exist in the world, and perhaps our part in the world can cause people to be angry. You know what it's like to have family and relatives. Some people just bug you, and you're related. Some people make you angry, so angry you can just, right? So we as a nation are really all parts of the individual. So each year, firehouses in New York hold a ceremony on September 11th. I go on every 5 years. Just out there last week. And every fire department lost some of their members. When I go to, every time they lost 15. Some firehouses lost all of their staff. But at the two times that the plane struck, the firefighter will line up in the street outside their firehouse for a moment of silence. Ring a bell to remember lost. A little prayer service, a little remembrance. And each year they add the little kids of the dads or the moms of the firefighters. They add them to the speakers list. And now, nieces and nephews, grandchildren, can say a few words. Those lives across the generations. What's commemorated? Not the vengeance, not the anger, but what was lost. The big chunk taken out of our community. And now you and I would feel if over half the class here got wiped out. You might think, yeah, well, that he was a jerk. Good riddance, right? But really? Really? You jerk? We're all jerks. To somebody. But the vast majority of who we are in the community, not powerful. It's necessary. Every small community needs you. So, 9/11 was a big deal for a small community. Here in the city of South Dakota, neighborhoods. So, I don't think we're forgetting anything here for you. Little life lessons. I'm just getting you ready for your high school graduation speaker. I can't remember what my speaker ever said. Good advice. God, he gave me good advice. Can't remember what it is, but there you go, right? And the reason we don't remember it is because it's like, duh. Be a good neighbor, help, think of a solution, be engaged, right? Those are really the lessons of 9/11. And be part of the larger world. I went into Hispanic ministry because of that. I learned Spanish because of that. Instead of throwing bombs back, I throw salsa. You engage the world. All right. How I got it?
Got any questions? How long were you in New York?
Well, at that time, I was there for 9 days, and I had an airline ticket to fly home, and we didn't know when we were going to leave or could leave, because all the flights in the country were grounded. If any plane was in the air, no matter how big or small, any plane was in the air, the orders were to shoot it down. Because they were afraid of prop dusting planes being rigged with poison. We didn't know how deep this terrorist plot was. And so we couldn't come home, but we had tickets on our own Sun Country airline, Minnesota's own airline. It just so happened that after a week of wandering the streets, talking to people, the very first plane that took off in the nation was our flight, Sun Country, New York to Minneapolis to LA. And there were all 8 passengers. People were still a little afraid to fly. So we get into the plane, we take off, the stewardess comes up to us and says, would you like some peanuts? Bag of peanuts? Yeah, I will take a bag of peanuts. And so she doesn't bring us a little bag of peanuts to get on the plane. She brought us each a whole big bag of the little peanut bags. Because there's only 8 of us on the plane. As we were flying, she said, well, I guess I'm not passing out peanuts. Where are you two guys going? Are you going to LA? Now we're getting out of Minneapolis. Oh, Minneapolis, you're from Minnesota. Yeah, we're from Minnesota. And of course, where from Minnesota? Well, oh, here we go. We're west of the Twin Cities. Yeah. Where? We got it working on to Burbank. Oh yeah, I'm from Burbank. Okay, the stewardess. Right. Small world. So you never know who you're going to run into. But certainly, whoever you run into in the world is, like it or not, even the jerks, are your brothers and sisters. Okay. Right.
Great story, great message. I appreciate the Father Jeff. It is about 10 o'clock. You can go to your, you still the second hour? Yeah. Head to your second hour class. One more round of applause. Thank you.
I'm letting you know when you're second hour class.
I think so. Taking it.